I grew up in Seattle, Washington, and I didn't have any kind of connection with the Lithuanian community or even my grandparents who were Lithuanian. They lived near Boston, and I didn't have any connection with them. And my father was kind of more American than Lithuanian, and my mom's totally American, but she's Ukrainian, Italian. And so I didn't go to any of those Saturday schools. I didn't know any other Lithuanians until I was like, I don't know, much later in my life. And I didn't really have much interest in coming to Lithuania, but then in 1995, it was actually my mom, who's not Lithuanian, she said, okay, we're all going to Lithuania, we're gonna meet our relatives. My mom's Italian, she's very like family, you have to know your relatives. And so that was my first trip. And actually, it was really weird. I got off the train in Kaunas. All my, like, 3 of my relatives met me at the train station with their little ladas, you know? And we went back to our relative's apartment in Kaunas, and it was like right away this very kind of emotional, weird, like, oh, these are Mikšys. I don't know any, my whole life I've never been another Mikšys and all that. So, and pretty much right away, I spent about 2 weeks in Lithuania, and I knew right away that I wanted to find a way to come back and photograph. So I came back the next summer for a couple of weeks. I'm getting lost on time, but then, and then I was in college. I was in university, actually, getting my master's degree. And I applied for a Fulbright, which is a grant to Americans to come to Europe or anywhere in the world, actually. And I got it, and it was kind of amazing. So I wrote a grant that I would just come and work on an independent project. And that's what I did. So I came to Lithuania in, it was 1998, 99. I think it's very important to find a project that really interests you, like it's really something deep in there that you want to look at. And sometimes it takes a long time to figure it out. I think if you're really interested in something and interested in people and you're not there to, you know, exploit them or manipulate them, then I think there is some kind of thing that people can sense that's not verbal. I think there's something about that, having this kind of intense interest in your subject that people can sense. I'm not sure that photography, like the kind of photography that I do, is really going to change something dramatically, you know. I get a little bit conflicted trying to use an art project for some kind of social activism. And the same thing with my project about the Roma. You know, I work with a lot of organizations that work with the Roma and Roma organizations, the Roma community, and they often ask me to, you know, let's use your photography, use my photography to, you know, teach people about the Roma community or something like that, but it doesn't always fit my personal artistic ideas, which are a little bit more, not so, you know, a little bit more vague or like a little bit open-ended. They're not like, you know, this is right and this is wrong. My Roma project, it's interesting, I did it just about one ethnic group, but for me it's kind of just in general, it's when I sort of started to understand Lithuanian society and where the Roma fit into that, it was very interesting to me that they were kind of people in Lithuania, Lithuanians who were kind of pushed to the edge of society and lived at the edge of society, like not exactly in the center, maybe a little bit by choice to preserve their culture and identity. The amazing thing for me about photographing the Roma, talking to Roma people, is how much, you know, after being in Lithuania for like 500 years and, you know, having lots of problems, being discriminated against quite a bit, that they still have this very deep, you know, connection to their ethnic Roma identity and pride, you know. So I find that very interesting too. But for me, the kind of the broader thing of like, it's always for me like a little bit finding kind of interesting spaces. It's a little bit psychological, it's a little bit historical. In my project, I don't really try to say, you know, I'm showing Roma culture or something like that. It's more about the individuals that are in my photographs, and I find them interesting. And well, I found that word, and it's common in Romani. People use it kind of like sėkmės, but it means laimė, like in Lithuanian. And I found it, and I talked to a a Roma language expert. He's Romani, he's a professor in Texas. And he said the word means luck, fate, destiny, kismet, you know. And for me, I was like, wow, this really like kind of encompasses, you know, my project and like sort of the underlying themes in the project a little bit about the Roma, like what is the fate of the Roma in Lithuania? And in luck, I mean, the way he defined it, I mean, luck can also be kind of good luck and bad luck. Now I know there's this BAXT and then there's VBAXT, which means bad luck. So yeah, for me it was like it really kind of summarized the project and where the Roma fit into Lithuanian society. The Roma community, a lot of their history and their family history, which is super important, to know your whole family history and lineage and all that. It's an oral tradition, it's not like written down, and it's preserved in photographs. Like lots of people will have photographs of deceased loved ones or on the wall in their houses. And I found this really fascinating, and I understood it when I was photographing in Tabatas a lot. So I said, okay, I'm gonna go around for a couple days and photograph people's photographs. So I started doing that, and then I went to some houses where I'd photographed, and there was my photograph on the wall, and I was like, what? You know, I was like, because that's part of my process too, and it really helped with the Roma. Like, I would go in the Tabatas on my first visits. I would take some pictures with my big film camera, and then I had this little point and shoot camera, also a film camera, and I would take some pictures, or I'd give it to some kids. They'd run around and take some pictures. And then I would bring those photographs back the next time and give people photographs. But I also gave them like photographs from my book. I gave people copies of my book when I published it. And the kind of amazing reaction was I went to the Tabatas, gave people copies of the book, you know, because there's a photograph of them in the book. They would flip through the book, tear the picture of themselves out, and give me the rest of the book back. So it was kind of like this really amazing thing. I was like, wow, okay. And then, when I went into people's houses, they had photographs from my book that the pages torn out and sometimes redecorated, and they were in people's houses. So for me, I kind of say it was kind of the coolest exhibition I ever had, you know, because it was really a lot, you know. And like one girl, I gave her a big frame photograph after an exhibition, and she had it in her house. Actually, it had fallen off the wall and the glass was a little bit broken. But like there was just like all these kind of like amazing, I was like, wow, you know. And it's also like, okay, in a museum, people like to come and look at photographs, but like it's kind of amazing when people really, they need those photographs and they use those photographs in such a personal way that it was really like quite cool. I really like that. And I'll show some of that in the exhibition. I'll show some of those pictures. The exhibition in the lobby space leading into the gallery, we're gonna have a series of doors with photographs on them of the same house that was in Kirtama in Tabatas, that I took over about a 20-year period. What happened there was in 2004, a friend of mine told me something was gonna happen in Tabatas. So I went early in the morning and was there, nothing was going on, and some people I know said, I told them, you know, I think something's gonna happen today, the police are coming or something, I don't know. And they said, no, nothing's gonna happen, just come inside, let's have some coffee. So I was kind of hanging out with just people I know there, but then the police showed up and the Savivaldybė, and they started tearing down houses in the Tabatas that were supposedly unregistered, and it happened for 2 days. And at that point, I kind of like, I didn't know what to do. I took pictures, but I'm just like the worst photojournalist. This newspaper actually asked me for photos, because that first day, I think I was the only one there, like photographing when they were tearing down houses, and people were being taken out of the houses and like thrown outside. And I took some pictures, but it looked like nothing was happening. You know, it was like there was no action, you know, people screaming or anything. So I said, okay, what can I do that would, you know, at least document this place before it's all torn down? This is like crazy, you know? And so I just started photographing all the houses, but then I kept coming back to this one house, which I had photographed before, that was in the lower Tabotis, and it's like the definition, like Plato could define like a house, you know. It was a roof with angled roof with 4 walls. And I kept coming back to it and photographing it, and when the first time I photographed it, it was nobody was living there. And then over the years, people moved in. The bride that's in the Mo collection, the photograph of the bride, she was living there. I think, I'm not sure with who, maybe her mother. She was from Ešeškis, but she ended up living there. And that, you know, then there was a fence, and, you know, the house grew and grew and grew. And then at one point it burned down, something happened to it. I kind of missed that moment when that happened. And then I photographed, continued photographing there, and this kind of empty space, and then now there are no houses there at all because the Tabotis has been removed and nobody lives there anymore, which I find, I mean, personally it was quite a, that whole thing was a story about Vilnius that really wasn't told, you know. And so in this exhibition I'm going to do it hopefully with one house, you know, and showing what happened to one house a little bit. And on the other side of the doors, I'm going to have photographs of people who lived in Tabotis and from the inside of their house. And if you go to the places I love to photograph, like Ešeškis, Žagarė, Troškūnai, there are these kind of old Roma communities there. And they're, I mean, in my mind, it's kind of like just anybody else from that town. And they're very integrated into the towns and the communities there. And so I found that very interesting. And then there's some just kind of amazing places like Sledžius, which is a little bit past Kaunas on the Nemunas. There's this village, and it's there's a Pilnakalnis, like a pagan hill. And on the side of the hill, I think part of it was natural, and then the pagans built like a mound on top of it. And on the side of the hill there were like 5 houses. Like you go up, there's a plateau, there's a house. You go up, there's another plateau. And that's where the Roma community lived in that town, with this like killer view of the Nemunas, and just like, it's amazing. And I'm sure some families still live there. But I photographed there several times, and some of those photographs will be in the shows, kind of one of my favorite places to photograph. And I think, you know, there's another part of this exhibition that's, you know, just my kind of, you know, I think sometimes you choose a project to learn about other things, or like all the things around the periphery. Maybe it's not in the photographs all the time. But for me, like Sledžius, you know, it's like this, you know, it's like there's all these layers of Lithuanian history take place in this town from pagan times. I think that's kind of close to where like the Napoleonic armies gathered at one point there. There's the whole Christian history, and Sledžius was very Jewish, so there's all that history. It's an interesting thing for me when I met, you know, Rome people and the way they treated me. I always, you know, say, well, they're like my Italian relatives, you know, they're always inviting me in. I have to sit down at the table, I have to eat something, I have to have some coffee. And I think, I don't know, you could ask some other Rome people, but it's also this kind of thing like the door is never locked, you know, and you're just like my neighbors in Žagarė, they're always like, you know, just open the door, just come in, you know, it's always like this, just opening the door and coming in. And that's kind of an element, I think, with the doors in the exhibition a little bit. For me, like those little things were kind of very welcoming. The Jewish community and the Roma community, we kind of always refer to them as this, the Roma community, you know, and the Jewish community. And I think what gets lost a little bit is those communities are made up of individuals that are all very different. Maybe they don't even want to identify with those communities, like, or, you know, or necessarily, or in the way that we envision them, that they're all the same or want to be in this kind of bubble. I think we have to be careful about that, and I think, you know, hopefully in the show we deal with that a little bit.